There's a real city called Timbuktu. It has streets, mosques, a history stretching back centuries. And yet, somehow, its name became the English language's go-to phrase for a place so far away it barely exists. The story of how that happened is about exploration, ignorance, and the strange power of a name that sounded, to European ears, like the edge of the world. To understand why Timbuktu captured the European imagination, you have to understand what the world looked like to a 15th or 16th century European mapmaker. The northern coasts of Africa were well documented. Trade routes along the Mediterranean were busy and familiar. But the interior of Africa, everything south of the Sahara, was largely a mystery, and that mystery was not empty. West Africa, in the medieval and early modern period, was home to some of the wealthiest and most sophisticated empires on Earth. The Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, cities with universities, libraries, active gold and salt trades that moved staggering quantities of wealth. But the Sahara Desert acted as a wall of heat and sand and distance that most Europeans simply could not cross. So they heard rumors, stories of a city somewhere deep in the continent, fabulously wealthy, impossibly remote, a place at the end of everything. That city was Timbuktu. The earliest European record of the name appears in the 1550s, spelled at various points as Tambutum, Timbuktu, and eventually the modern Timbuktu. But the city itself is considerably older than that. It was founded around the 12th century as a seasonal camp by Tuareg nomads and grew into a permanent settlement, then a trading hub, then one of the most important cities in the medieval world. The name itself comes from the Songhai language, the language of the Songhai Empire that controlled the region during its peak in the 15th and 16th centuries. The meaning, according to historians of the region, is essentially hollow or depression, a reference to the low-lying geography of the place, a hollow in the landscape near the Niger River where the city sits. It is a geographic description, practical, grounded, specific. The name was never mysterious to the people who lived there, but to Europeans it was anything but ordinary. The city's reputation reached European ears primarily through Arab geographers and traders. The most important of these was Leo Africanus, born Al-Hassan ibn Muhammad al-Wazan, a Moorish diplomat and traveler who visited Timbuktu around 1510 and later wrote a detailed geographical account of Africa while living in Rome. His book, published in Italian in 1526, described Timbuktu's wealth in vivid terms. He wrote about the king's court, about scholars, about gold so plentiful it seemed almost casual. This text was widely read across Europe, and it burned Timbuktu into the European consciousness as a place of legendary, almost mythological richness. The problem was that nobody in Europe could actually get there. The Sahara was a serious physical barrier, and the political situation across North Africa made overland travel from Europe extremely difficult. So Timbuktu remained known but unreachable. It appeared on European maps, sometimes correctly placed, sometimes wildly wrong. It was discussed in courts and coffee houses. It became, gradually, not just a city but a concept, the place that exists, that is real, and that you simply cannot reach. The English specifically began using the name as a byword for extreme remoteness during the era of British exploration, particularly in the 18th and 19th centuries when reaching Timbuktu became a kind of obsession for the geographical societies of Europe. The Paris-based Société de Géographie offered a prize in 1824 to the first European who could reach Timbuktu and return alive. That detail tells you everything. Return alive. The place was considered so remote, so dangerous, so beyond the edge of the known, that survival was genuinely in question. A Scottish explorer named Gordon Laing became the first documented European to reach the city in 1826. He made it there. He did not make it back. He was killed shortly after leaving. The French explorer René Cailly reached Timbuktu in 1828 and returned to tell the story, becoming the first European to do so. He won the prize. But his account, frankly, deflated the legend. He described a city that was, by that point, past its peak. Modest, dusty, real. The myth and the reality had diverged completely, and the myth was far more useful to the English language. Here's the misconception most people carry. They assume Timbuktu is either not a real place at all, just a made-up word for nowhere, or that it was always a small, insignificant town. Neither is true. Timbuktu, at its height in the 15th and 16th centuries, was a major center of Islamic scholarship. The Sankore Mosque functioned as a university. The city held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts on subjects ranging from astronomy to law to medicine. It was, by contemporary accounts, a city of genuine intellectual and economic weight. What actually happened is that European inaccessibility transformed a real place into a symbol. Because Europeans could not reach it, could not verify it, could not domesticate it into their systems of trade and empire, it remained permanently other. and that otherness calcified into language. The word stopped being a place name and became a concept, specifically the concept of somewhere so far away that ordinary rules do not apply, and the phrase is still alive in contemporary English. People say from here to Timbuktu to mean an absurd distance. They say out in Timbuktu to mean somewhere isolated and inconvenient. It shows up in advertising, in casual conversation, in song lyrics. Paul McCartney used a variant in a song. Toni Morrison used it in her writing. It crosses registers from casual speech to literary prose. What is interesting is that almost everyone using the phrase has no idea it is a real place in Mali, a city that still exists, a city that, in recent years, has faced genuine crises, including occupation by militant groups in 2012 who destroyed some of those ancient manuscripts that Leo Africanus would have recognized. The real Timbuktu continues to have a history while the English language Timbuctoo floats free of it, a ghost of a reputation built on 5 centuries of European imagination. The linguistic journey of Timbuktu connects to a broader pattern in English where foreign place names become idioms for remoteness or strangeness. Beyond the pale, the back of beyond, the middle of nowhere all work similarly, taking a geographic reference and stretching it into metaphor. What is distinctive about Timbuktu is that the original place was never actually at the edge of anything. It was a center, a hub. The edge was entirely a European projection. The Songhai root, meaning hollow or depression, is a reminder that place names usually carry local, practical information. They describe terrain, history, events. When a name crosses linguistic borders without its meaning, the new speakers fill the gap with whatever fears or fantasies they are carrying. European explorers filled Timbuktu with gold and danger. Then, when neither turned out to be quite as extreme as imagined, it became a placeholder for impossibility. There's also something worth noting about the spelling history. Timbuktu, with a double O, was the dominant English spelling well into the 19th century. That spelling makes the word look even more foreign, more extravagant, more like something from the edge of the alphabet. The modern standardized spelling Timbuktu is actually closer to the original Songhai and Arabic forms, a small correction that came too late to change the word's emotional meaning in English. The city gave English not just a phrase, but a particular flavor of unreachability, one that is specific enough to feel real.